mushroom gravy. So I've got these beautiful big golden oak chanterelles, and I washed them off a couple days ago, and they're starting to get a little bit brown on the edge, so I'm going to go ahead and cook all these up. I have also got some very pretty lion's mane I just picked wild here in Napa. We've got some porcini mushrooms that I cooked up, and I've also got some Romaria aureospora, beautiful red coral mushroom, and the stems of a couple of Amanita muscaria, which I have boiled, and now I'm just going to cook as food. So I've also got some instant biscuits. I'm just going to pop these open and bake them off. Some arugula. I'm going to kind of put together like a creamy gravy base with some onions and some shallots and some garlic and some fennel with the mushrooms and some sausage, a little bit of bacon. Kind of cover that in make a roux and cover that in milk and make it get thick, and then spoon it over biscuits with some eggs that I'm going to sous vide and maybe a little bit of arugula. So that's what I'm working on, and that's what I'm going to get into. I was just over on TikTok streaming, but I'm kind of sick of TikTok. I feel like they're just really like throttling their views and making creators work extra hard to sort of get the bare minimum. So I'm over here on YouTube giving this a shot. We used to do a lot more streaming on Instagram, but Instagram has also made it very difficult for creators. So I'm going to give YouTube a shot. We'll see how it goes. But check this out. There's going to be some nice ASMR right here. So that's a good solid tin of biscuits, and hasn't done it yet, but it will. It will. Ooh, okay. Woo! There we go. That was the pop. That's what we were waiting for. All right. So I'm just going to take these little biscuits out of my can, whoops, and put them on a sheet tray and pop them in the oven at 350 for a little bit. Could I make biscuits from scratch? Absolutely. But is it like 8 p.m. already and I need to make dinner? Yeah. So I'm going to just pop these biscuits on a pan, put them in the oven, let them start baking in the background, and we're going to get working on our shanties and our gravy here. So I probably have more chanterelles than I'm going to need for the gravy, but I'll go ahead and just cook the chanterelles first. How long do these need? It's like 20 minutes, something like that. 16 minutes. Okay. Quick timer on. Right, that's good. Our pan is on. Excellent. So I'm going to pop my fennel, my beautiful aromatic, in here with the garlic and the shallot that I cut up. Fennel has this beautiful sort of anise flavor when it's fresh and super crunchy, but as you cook it down, I know some people aren't a favor of that kind of licoricey anise flavor. I didn't used to be, but I am now, something I learned to like. But it gets really sweet and soft, kind of like an onion when you cook it down. So I really like cooking with fennel. It's just an amazing ingredient. Okay, so here's these nice, huge, golden chanterelles. I'm going to go ahead. How do I want to cut these up exactly? I kind of want bigger chunks for the gravy, because bigger chunks of mushrooms have more texture. But I don't want them so big that I'm kind of like chewing through them necessarily. I just want them to have like nice meaty texture. But I'm gonna, leaving relatively large chunks, because if I cut them too small, they won't be recognizable as mushrooms anymore necessarily. I think that's the thing that a lot of people forget, was when you cook a mushroom, you kind of set the texture. And you can always cut it up more after it's been cooked, but you can't uncut it up. If you cut it up too small, and then it kind of loses some of its texture and its meaty appeal, you've just kind of over-doctored it, and you can't get it back. So generally when I'm cooking mushrooms, I like cutting larger pieces rather than smaller pieces. And then if I want to cook, break them up more once they've been cooked, I can do that. But that's just, an idea when it comes to mushroom cookery and even mushroom butchery, as we think about how to cut these things up to kind of give the maximum yield of texture and flavor as we eat. And I think a lot about that kind of thing, because food is very much a process in the mouth of experiencing things as you're kind of eating them. So move this down a little bit and see some more of the chopping as it occurs. So here's a really big one. It's a nice big shanty. You know, the process of eating something is very much like how it kind of enters your mouth and how it's going to be chewed up, basically. And like the way that something is cut or cooked, the textures it presents to your mouth can have a big impact on whether or not you like something. And I talk to people all the time who, you know, really don't like a food until they have it prepared in a certain way. And, you know, maybe it was steamed Brussels sprouts and they always hated them, and they finally had like a roast Brussels sprout. I'm like, whoa, this is a whole new world of flavor. And you're like, yep, it's not actually the flavors changed that much. I mean, it is for Brussels sprouts, but for a lot of mushrooms, sometimes it can just be a texture thing. Because I hear all the time people are like, oh, I don't like wet, slippery mushrooms. And I'm like, oh, well, it just means that someone's like cooking them wrong. And the biggest mistake that people make with mushrooms, and specifically chanterelles, I see this a lot, is they just drown them in butter from the start. And that's not a great way to cook a mushroom. It's much better to put a mushroom into a pan dry. And that's what I'm doing. It's called dry frying. I'm just a big cast iron here that has no oil or butter in it. And I'm going to cook these mushrooms down and let them kind of render any moisture that's inside them. And no matter like how dry chanterelles look, they almost always have quite a bit of water inside of them that's going to need to cook out. And it's better to cook all that water out before you add fat to the pan, because that'll keep it from getting kind of soggy and insipid. Cooking all the water out kind of squeezes the mushroom sponge, and then it will give up all the water, and that kind of, when you put fat in, it'll absorb all the fat as a nice spongy thing. But if you don't squeeze all the water out first, then the fat absorbs and kind of keeps all the water stuck in the mushroom. I guess it is really like gross, not gross, but like slippery mushrooms, which I don't mind, but a lot of people don't. People want a nice crispy golden mushroom, and I get that because it does taste better. There's certain dishes where I like the slippery, slimy texture of particular kinds of mushrooms, and I would seek that out, maybe. Yeah, I mean, these chanterelles are very meaty, pretty dry, because I picked them like last week. I did wash them off when I brought them home, but they've been sitting in the fridge for about a week now, and like I said, it's time to cook them, but they're still bleeding out some moisture, despite the fact that they've been sort of in a paper bag and look like they're starting to desiccate. It's just a kind of a homage to how much moisture chanterelles tend to have inside of them. It's a good part of the reason that they last so long out in nature. So, okay, I'm going to bring you guys over to the stove so you can see what I'm doing. And get my camera switched around here real quick. All right. If anyone did come over here from TikTok, thank you for joining me. Thank you for following my YouTube. I used to do a lot more cooking on Instagram too, but I'm going to do most of it on YouTube, I think, from now on. So if you like my cooking content, I'm glad you're here on YouTube. You're in the right spot. Okay, here's chanterelles. We're going to add a nice pinch of salt. Like I said, I'm probably not going to put all of these in the mushroom gravy, but I will put some. So if these are fresh, you know, if I'd picked them like today instead of last week, there'd be a lot more water in the pan here. But I'm going to jack the heat up here too. Put a lot of heat on these quickly, and then I'll go in with some of my sausage, a little bit of bacon, all my aromatics, and I'll just kind of start building a sauce around all these beautiful mushrooms that I've got. So I do a lot of unusual cooking with mushrooms, like at least non-standard. You know, pretty much everyone just uses like pasta and pizza as a vehicle for mushrooms, or you know, occasionally you'll see people serving them with steak kind of thing. And that's all great, but I like doing slightly more unusual things with mushrooms, and particularly what I like to do is cook mushrooms and meat together, because I think that the flavor is really good, And I really like the way that meat and mushrooms complement each other nutritionally. Because mushrooms have a lot of fiber, meat has no fiber. Meat has a lot of fat, mushrooms have very little fat. And the two of those things combined means that they are kind of the perfect foods to eat with one another. And if you just toss in a couple of veggies and a few other things, you have a complete meal, where so often what we're eating is really deficient in fiber in particular. And there's a huge lack of good dietary fiber in American diets, and that has a huge impact on why we see so much heart disease, colon cancer, diabetes, all sorts of issues in society, health-wise, that people are dealing with, and it's because we really just don't eat enough fiber. And when I say fiber, I don't mean like putting Metamucil in stuff. I mean like eating a really wide diversity of fruits and vegetables and mushrooms and whole grains and all sorts of stuff that is just inherently good for us, but we've kind of forgotten that food is supposed to be interesting and diverse and not just like the same fast food type items all the time. I get it that, like, you know, chicken nuggets are good, or there's foods that are comfort foods, and by no means do I discourage people from eating those things. Eat them if you want them. If they taste good, do what tastes good to you. But consider, you know, adding in some extra vegetables, some mushrooms. You know, if you are cooking a dish that has some meat in it, you know, throw some mushrooms in with the meat and it'll absorb the fat, and you won't have to like pour off all that beef grease at the end. You're going to be getting a lot more dietary fiber. It'll help you digest better. You'll be, you know, just all around healthier. I ended up losing a bunch of weight at the sort of mid-pandemic because I stopped going to the store and buying a bunch of meat. I stopped going out to eat and overeating, and I was just growing vegetables in the garden and, you know, foraging mushrooms and hiking and getting outside, and I dropped like 20 pounds. I felt great, and I've been able to keep it off for the most part through foraging, through eating well, and I think that's just an amazing thing that I can confidently say that eating mushrooms will make you healthier, especially if you reduce the amount of meat and a few of the other things you know, a few of the things that are probably not so good for you. You could reduce the amount of dairy, you could reduce the amount of processed carbs and starch, just have some more fiber and interesting things in your diet. Again, I think some people get weirdly offended when you suggest that they should like eat less meat. And I'm not saying no meat. I'm not vegan. I'm going to put bacon and sausage in this. But I'm going to put in like 2 pieces of bacon and like half a package of sausage, which is, you know, not, if you got that as someone's just making sausage gravy and there was only half a pack of sausage in it, it would be a pretty lame gravy. But this is going to be a great gravy because I've got tons of veggies and tons of mushrooms that I'm putting in with those high value animal fats. So okay, I'm going to grab a little container to put some of these shanties aside. Okay, chanterelles are looking great. Like I said, I'm just going to pull a couple of these off. And now that they're cooked, I'm confident that they're not like going to go bad in the fridge, which is great. So I can freeze some for later, or just put them into another dish later in the week. There we go. Okay, chanterelles out. Oops, sorry about that. We're going to put some bacon in, and I'll go with the sausage too. I'm squeezing out the sausage here. Trying to get as much of a sear on it as possible. Develop some nice umami. Get this bacon working. Like I said, there's still meat in this. There's just going to be a lot of vegetables and mushrooms too. And so this is sort of like my favorite way to eat, where I'm getting the best of everything. Instead of just limiting yourself to one thing, I get all of it. And it's, kind of moderation in all its forms. So. Okay, so once I get a little bit of this fat rendered, I'll go in with the other mushrooms that I have cooked already, which are the Amanita muscaria, the Porcini, and the Romaria. You could take the same kind of method and turn it into like a pot pie very easily. I'm going to use milk to make a gravy, but you could totally just use stock and then, put it in a pot and put biscuits on top and then bake it, and you'd have a pot pie. I do that sometimes too. It's another great way to add lots and lots of mushrooms and other delicious stuff to whatever you're making. I'm going to move you guys back for 1 sec because my biscuits are ready. Oh, perfect every time. They're not great biscuits, but they'll do. It's hard to beat the convenience of biscuits in a can. Okay. Ooh, flip this sausage over. And let that rip for another minute or two. This is looking pretty good. Just keep it rocking here for a little bit. I'm going to try to break up some of the sausage before I put all the mushrooms in. Because the mushrooms, once they're in, are going to be very much integrated into this, and it might be harder to kind of smash up the sausage, because it might just be mashing up my mushrooms. mushrooms are pretty hard to actually break apart with a spatula like this. Meat is interesting because mushrooms are brittle when they're raw, but once they're cooked, their texture is very resilient. And meat's kind of the opposite in that like raw sausage is like totally moldable and amorphous. And then once you cook it, it gets all like crumbly and dry. So it's like mushrooms and meat are kind of like textural opposites in terms of how they change when you cook them. But in the mouth, they have a very similar feel and texture. So, I don't know, it's cool thing by the way is that mushrooms and meat are similar but also different from a culinary perspective. Okay, rendered fat, we get a nice bit of fat here. Here's our porcini mushrooms. Stir those around for a bit. I think there's some lexinum in here too. So this is Boletus grand edgeless and Lexinum manzanite, both mushrooms. Here are the Amanita muscaria stems, so I boiled those and removed the ibotenic toxin from them. Now they're just good edible mushrooms. And I'm also going to put in this Romaria, this kind of red coral fungus that I cooked down. So this is quite a selection of mushrooms. And just stir these around for a second and get them kind of coated in the fat, mixed in with the meat. So there's at least, I guess, 5 species of mushrooms in here. It's a pretty good lineup. A little bit of meat, a lot of mushrooms. Okay, and I'm going to add some butter too because, you know, I like butter. Butter is good. There we go. I think I was making some toast with this butter or something like that, so there you go. So here I've got fennel and onion and shallots. I'm going to put them, get them stirred around in the fat here and just saute for a couple of minutes, get everything kind of soft, build a roux, and then come in with a bit of milk and cream and make myself a gravy. Okay. Season every step, so here's a little bit of salt there. I'm just going to get those veggies kind of coated up in that butter that's down in there. Try to push some room in here so the veggies can contact the heat in the pan. It's looking pretty good. Again, there's meat in here. But there's a lot of mushrooms, there's a lot of veg. I'm making something that's very much comfort food. You know, this biscuits and sausage gravy is, for me, very much a comfort food. But I'm kind of making it in a style that is a little bit more wild, a little bit more foraged, a little bit more focused on fiber. You know, I love biscuits and gravy as a dish, but it is not a dish that makes you feel very good if you eat it, because there's no fiber. And every time I go to like a hotel and they serve me biscuits and gravy, and I'm like, wow, I love this, but God, how am I gonna what am I gonna eat to help myself poop the next day? Because if you eat biscuits and gravy and a burger and French fries, like, you're gonna have a tough time getting things moving, let's say. So this stuff is really good for your microbiome. It feeds lots of good bacteria inside of your gut. Lots of fiber, helps you digest well, live healthily. Your heart is happier, your body is happier, your brain is happier. All sorts of stuff. I don't need to keep going into it ad nauseum, but I think it really is kind of the core issue we face as Americans in our health, is that we just don't eat enough fiber, and there's no discussion about that in society. is all about controlling calories, but not actually what you're eating and the quality of the fiber and the polysaccharides and what you're eating and how that affects your microbiome and your other biological functions. So those are starting to look a little translucent. I'm going to go ahead and make a little well here, put some garlic in. Tiny bit more salt. Let's get a little bit of heat on that garlic. Okay. Really stir it around. I absolutely love food like this. It just makes me so happy. Okay. So in the center here, I'm going to build a little bit of a roux, and we'll bring together our gravy on top of that. So usually when I'm making a roux, I overshoot how much I want to thicken a little bit, just because I'd rather have something to be too thick than too thin. Because you can always make it thinner, but you can't make it thicker. I mean, you can make it thicker by like making more roux and kind of semi-cooking it in or cooking it separately and then stirring it in, but it's always better when you do it right the first time. So I probably put in roughly 2 tablespoons of flour here, which is, you know, a good amount to thicken this whole thing. Might have been a little less than 2 tablespoons, but it should be enough to thicken this batch. If I really need to, I can always get some Wonder flour on the side, make it a little slurry. But I'm going to add just a tiny bit of color to it, which will reduce its thickening ability, but enhance its flavor. I'm going to deglaze just a tiny bit of sherry vinegar here. I'm going to add in a little bit of heavy cream for a little bit of richness, make that gravy nice and thick. I'm going to go ahead and just add about a cup of milk here. If I want it thicker, I can always add a little bit of water. Seasoning-wise at this point, I'm going to give a little shot of Tonnacious sherry, just for a little bit of heat. And we're going to go into a bunch of porcini powder, too. It makes really nice umami, lots of background flavor. And I'll go ahead and just kind of stir this whole thing up. Make sure things don't stick to the bottom here. And pretty soon we'll be nice and thick and we'll be ready to eat. I was going to put some green onion in this too, but I forgot. But, you know, I might finish a little green onion. I've got some arugula to serve this with too. I really like doing, you know, bitter greens like arugula with some kind of like rich and heavy and flavorful like this. But I think this will all come together and be pretty darn tasty. Got a little bit of cream cheese too. I'm just going to whack that in there. It's going to go to waste otherwise, but I can give it a little extra life by melting it into my gravy. That'll be good. A little extra yummy dairy in there. And I don't, because it's not just a pure sausage gravy, I got all these veggies in here, I don't mind adding a little extra richness. Put a little extra water here. I was watching it get very, very thick. And I still want it to have some gravy to this whole thing. Like, I want it thick, but I want it to have some movement as well. But that's what I was saying. I usually like to thicken it a little bit more than I need to, because I can always add more liquid and continue to kind of spread the food around. That's honestly what gravy is. It's just taking, you know, the odds and ends of things and the leftovers of things and turning them into something really delicious. A sauce that is, in this case, full of nutrition, full of veggies, full of all sorts of good stuff. But I think that'll be pretty good. Had a little taste to it. It tastes very good. Just letting it thicken up here for a second. Kind of all of it come back to a boil. You can see your flour thickened sauces thicken the most when they're come to a full boil. You can see it's, you know, nice and thick, kind of coating the sides of the pan, coating the back of a spoon. It's one of those tests they do. You know, can it coat the back of a spoon? Yes, yes it can. Ooh, oh, it tastes good. You know, really, that big blast of porcini powder I gave it a ton of umami. Very intense, delicious mushroom flavor. Could also put some herbs, like, you know, I might have a little fresh chopped rosemary in this to finish it. Some sage, things like that would be really good. Yum. That's great. I'm turn the heat down just a tiny bit. I'm gonna pop a couple eggs in my sous vide. Okay, that's going. It's nice, thick mushroom gravy here. Really, really good. Okay, I'm gonna go outside and grab just a tiny bit of rosemary. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this dish off. I meant to put that timer on for 10 minutes. Not 1 minute. Okay, there we go. So I got this little handful of rosemary here. I'm just going to chop this up and toss it in. Okay. You don't need a lot of rosemary. It is a very strong, pungent flavor, but I think that little bit will kind of run through this whole dish. I'm going to put a tiny bit of herb de Provence in too. Since I put the rosemary in, I'm going to go with my herb de Provence. Classic mixture of savory and thyme and rosemary and lavender and basil, sage, lavender, rosemary, marjoram, savory, thyme. Yeah, it's great. Great herbal blend, but just a little hint of that made it slightly Provençal, you know, harkening back to my days in France. Spent time in Paris as a kid and also visited France a lot throughout the years. I haven't been since 2009. Really want to get back to France. It'd be really cool to go to France, do some mushroom hunting. You know, that would be dope. So I'm trying to sous vide an egg, and it's taking longer than I want it to. I should have started earlier. But I also don't know how well it's going to work, because I'm trying to fast sous vide an egg. Usually when I sous vide eggs, I do it for about an hour at a low temperature, like 146. And currently I've got my sous vide at like 180, and I'm going to give it like 10 minutes and hope that the egg isn't raw and isn't massively overcooked. So we'll see how that works. But I'll start assembling a plate, and you guys will either watch a perfectly cooked egg or some disastrous fail. Either way, I'm gonna eat dinner. So. Ooh. I've also got some parsley, so it'll be a nice fresh green into my gravy. Okay, so there we go. Do some sort of final taste tests and seasoning adjustments, stuff like that on the gravy. Could do more porcini powder, could do more salt. But I'm pretty happy with the way this looks, and the tastes I've had were really good. So I'm gonna do a few more final taste tests, and then I'll start assembling my dish, and you guys can see what my mushroom sausage gravy looks like. Spoon on top of a biscuit with some egg and arugula. It's kind of my jam. I used to eat like this all the time in grad school, and I was just telling a friend about it the other day when we were asking what I make with mushrooms, and this is one of the things I do. So, there you go. Nice steamy spoonful. It's hot. Oh, yeah. Wow. The depth and flavor in that was so good. I'm going to give it just one more tiny hit of Tony Chachere's. I don't want to make it too salty, but it is a gravy, so it's going to be going on other things that are not super seasoned, so I'm okay at being relatively strongly flavored. Nice hit of black pepper there. Get that fresh stirred into our gravy. So I also love to kind of make this stuff and then keep it to put on top of stuff later. So I'll make a gravy like this, and I'll just make a piece of toast and then pop it on top of toast and put it back in the toaster oven, get it warmed up all the way through. And it's like shit nut shingle, you know. It's great. It's good. It's gonna be tasty. And because it's a bunch of mushrooms and veggies, I can eat this and feel good afterwards instead of just like eating sausage gravy and feeling like a lump in your stomach. I'm also going to eat like 2 biscuits with this, so this is certainly not the healthiest meal when it's predicated on biscuits. But I'm hungry. I hiked a lot today. I earned this, you know. Had a beer. Cheers. And we're just waiting for that beautiful moment of truth where I figure out if I did a good job with the eggs or if I totally messed them up. But we'll find out. It'll be exciting. I think I've heard about people doing sous vide eggs at like 172, maybe? Something like that. There's some magic temperature. You do them for like 15 minutes at 172, and they're supposed to turn out kind of jammy and perfect. I'm doing 180 for about 10 minutes, and that might be a little bit low. And we'll take one egg out and crack it. If it's not cooked yet, then whatever. I'll figure out how to cook it. I could always fry an egg. We can do different things. But, you know, be patient. Stay with me. You don't have to stick around to see this thing get finished off, but I figure you might as well stay for the payoff, right? Oh my god. Wow. All the different textures of mushrooms in there. Nice savory, creamy gravy. A little bacony flavor in there. Some sausage. I've got the fennel, and the rosemary, and the parsley. A little bit of that nice Creole heat. That's a good dish, man. Wow. Holy cow. Tiny bit more shisheries, just because I love it. I got one more little thing of goat cheese here too. I'll stir this in. I just have some like dairy products I need to use up, or they'll go bad in the fridge. So yeah, a little more richness isn't gonna hurt. I'm eating this with veggies, right? Yum. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, 20-second countdown. I'm going to go grab my sous vide eggs, and I'll show you guys what I'm working with. Okay, a little bit of arugula up on our biscuits here. That's how I make this healthy too. Some greens in there. Okay, this is the moment of truth. It's where we figure out whether or not the egg is cooked properly. Oh, that's promising. It's not raw to start with. Oop, okay. Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna grab the other egg. It doesn't need more time, that's for sure. might be overcooked. Either way, it'll be fine. It looks pretty jammy and soft on the inside. It's just going to be hard to peel. I like it when they're softer because then they kind of just come out. They floop out on their own. Crap, this is all stuck to the shell. I might use a spoon. All right, I think this is what we're going to have to do. Go in with our spoon. We're just going to hollow the egg out all the way around. Boom. Pretty much a perfectly poached egg. That's pretty easy, you know? Check that out. Ooh, that's hot. Ouch. Just running some cold water over the surface so I can handle it a little bit better. Okay, same thing. I'm gonna try to like crack the top here. Pull some off until I can kind of like access the inside of it. And then I'll probably use my spoon to kind of like flop it out. Usually when I do eggs, like I said, I do like, I think 146 for about an hour. You get sort of a perfectly soft, jammy egg that falls right out. Do a little bit hotter, it's going to cook more on the outside. So the inside of the egg is still perfect. The outside of the egg is inside of the egg's perfect. Outside's a little like sticking to the shell. But when I went ahead and popped a spoon in there, I was able to kind of run it around and just release the egg from the shell. And beautifully poached egg right there with this like super jammy, slutty yolk. Oh my god, look at that. It'll spread like butter. Oh, yes. All right. That's good. That is good eats. And then I'm just gonna, I guess, a bigger spoon. I got a bigger spoon. But I'm gonna go ahead and just spoon my mushroom gravy all over my eggs and arugula. And there's my nice, healthy mushroom. I mean, this is breakfast food to a lot of people, but to me, oh, this is a perfect dinner. So excited about that. Woo! So I know it doesn't look like the best at this point, but you saw everything that went into it, and I absolutely love this. So I'm going to go ahead and eat. I guess I'll take one bite for you guys while we're here before I go away. You're going to hear what this tastes like and sounds like, all the things. Okay, so I got some egg, I got some mushroom, I got some arugula. Wow. That's just absolutely phenomenal. So many good flavors, textures, really rich and hearty, but still delicious and healthy. So, pretty cool. There is the combo of the mushroom gravy, biscuits, the eggs, the arugula, all the good stuff. It is Gordon here. Hi, fascinated by fungi. I appreciate anyone who actually watched this whole thing. If you'd like to learn more from me, please check out my website, fascinatedbyfungi.com. I've got a page with all the links. You can check it out. I'm on all the different socials. And I have a podcast, etc. If you want to see more of my cooking, check out it here on YouTube or follow me on Instagram. Bye. Have a good one.